The morning felt calm when Marcus arrived at the airport, dressed in a simple navy blazer, white shirt, and comfortable shoes made for long travel days. He carried only a slim leather briefcase with his laptop and a small notebook inside. People noticed him because of the quiet confidence in his walk. He had a busy schedule ahead, with 2 meetings and a charity dinner the next day, but he was not stressed. He moved through security with a polite smile and respectful words for the staff. When the metal detector beeped because of his belt, he apologized kindly, placed it in the tray, and thanked the officer when he passed through. He believed small moments of kindness mattered, even on a tight timeline. He reached the gate early. The big windows showed the plane resting on the tarmac. Like a white bird, engines silent, lights blinking in a soft rhythm. A group of children nearby pressed their hands to the glass and guessed where the plane would fly over. Marcus listened and smiled. The gate screen changed from boarding soon to pre-boarding, and the usual announcements rolled out in a friendly voice. He checked his phone for a few last-minute emails from his assistant and sent a short message to his wife. "Boarding soon. Love you." She replied with a heart. He looked at the time and took a slow breath. He enjoyed these quiet minutes before a long flight. When they called business class, Marcus stood in line behind a woman with a violin case and a man reading an engineering magazine. 3 men stood a bit to his left, laughing loudly and joking about sports. They looked like friends on a trip, comfortable and full of energy. One of them stole glances at Marcus, then whispered something to the others, who chuckled again. Marcus did not mind. Airports were full of all kinds of people, and everyone had their own mood and story. He stepped forward when it was his turn, scanned his boarding pass, and walked down the jet bridge. The cabin smelled like fresh coffee and clean fabric. Soft music played. A flight attendant with kind eyes welcomed him and pointed to his seat, 3A by the window. The seat was wide and modern, with a screen for movies, a reading light, and a small storage space where he placed his briefcase. He touched the seat control, watched it move silently, and felt grateful for a little comfort on a long trip. The violinist took the seat across the aisle. The engineering reader sat behind him. The 3 laughing friends took 4C, 4D, and 4F, the A middle and aisle seats on the other side. Their voices stayed lively, like a small radio turned up in a quiet room. Marcus powered on his laptop. A presentation opened, full of charts about a new safety system his company helped design for airlines. He was proud of this project. It had started as a drawing on a napkin and grew into technology used by many carriers. It was not magic. It was careful planning, testing, and teamwork across many months. He checked slide by slide, making small edits, changing a color here, a font size there, until the story felt clear and simple. He wanted any person, from a pilot to a parent, to understand why this system would make flights safer and smoother. The flight attendants moved up and down the aisle with calm steps. One asked if he wanted water or juice. He chose water and thanked her for her help. She noticed his laptop and said, "Big day?" He nodded and gave a friendly answer. "Just sharing new ideas. I hope they help." She smiled, placed the glass on his tray, and went on to help the violinist store her instrument safely. The cabin lights grew a little brighter. People found their seats and settled their bags. A couple took selfies. A child asked 100 questions. The crew answered. With patience, everything felt normal and peaceful. As boarding continued, one of the 3 friends in row 4 told a long story with his hands, waving them in wide circles. Another one laughed so hard he had to wipe his eyes. The third kept looking toward Marcus, as if curious about him. Sometimes people looked at Marcus and tried to place him. Was he a professor? A lawyer? A coach? He let them guess. He had learned long ago that calm confidence spoke louder than any explanation. He focused on his notes, sipped water, and listened to the soft hum of the ventilation above his head. A few small things happened that were easy to miss unless you were paying attention. When Marcus stood to let the person in 3B pass to their seat, one of the men in row 4 whispered and laughed. When he sat again, he heard a chuckle behind him that did not match any obvious joke. It was not loud, and it was not kind either. Marcus felt the small sting of it, but he did not let it grow. He had faced many rooms and many eyes in his life. He knew how to anchor himself. Slow breath, straight spine, steady mind. He opened a new document and wrote a note to himself about the courage to keep showing up. The captain's voice came on, smooth and friendly, giving weather details and expected flight time. The cabin quieted. People put away larger devices, buckled up, and adjusted pillows behind their necks. The plane pushed back from the gate, paused, and then began the slow roll to the runway. Marcus looked out the window at the wing, the painted lines passing under it, the other planes like islands in a busy sea. He thought about the teams at his company who had tested systems through simulations and long nights, how they had found tiny errors and fixed them, how they had carried responsibility with care. He carried them with him in his thoughts. When the engines grew louder and the plane began to speed up, that same friend in row 4 reached overhead for a bag. The flight attendant asked him to sit until after takeoff with a polite but firm voice. The man sat down, a little annoyed, and made another comment that sounded like a joke but felt like a complaint. A second later, everyone felt the wheels lift. The plane rose into the air, the ground fell away, and the cabin pressed gently against their backs. The city became a pattern of shapes and light out the window. Marcus always loved this moment, the clean break between ground and sky. It reminded him that distance can give clarity. The seatbelt sign stayed on as the plane climbed. The three friends continued to whisper and chuckle. One of them pretended to cough and then snorted like he found something silly. The violinist across the aisle frowned and turned up her music on noise-canceling headphones. The engineer behind Marcus shifted in his seat, then leaned forward as if to read the title on Marcus's slides. Marcus angled the screen slightly, not to hide anything dramatic, but to make space for himself. He reminded himself that not every look carried a story, not every laugh carried a wound. He stayed with his work. Soon the seatbelt sign turned off. The cabin loosened. People stood, reached for bags, and arranged their things. The three friends asked for drinks and continued their lively conversation, now adding big gestures and playful comments. Every now and then, a phrase floated forward that felt like it had sharp edges, but it never turned into a direct statement. It was like a wind that passes through a doorway, not enough to slam it, just enough to make it creak. Marcus chose not to step into that wind. He asked for tea, thanked the attendant again, and took a careful sip. He opened his notebook and began to write by hand. He liked to write one page for himself on every trip, what he hoped to learn, who he hoped to encourage, and one gentle question he would carry into his meetings. His question today was simple. How can I make safety easier for everyone? He wrote about pilots who make hundreds of tiny choices each day, about cabin crews who calm nervous hearts, about parents who travel with children and wish for smooth skies. He wrote that technology should never make people feel small. It should make them feel supported and seen. Time passed in soft layers. The plane reached cruising altitude. The attendants began meal service. The cabin felt warmer, like a living room in the evening. The three friends quieted for a while as they ate, then began again with their steady rhythm of jokes. Marcus tasted the food slowly and listened to a message from his operations lead. The message included a suggestion about a feature in their system that could help crews share information more quickly during unusual events. He liked the idea and noted it down to raise at his next meeting. He could see the shape of a stronger future, made of both human care and smart design. From his window, clouds looked like gentle fields. The sun lit their tops in a clean line. He rested his eyes from the screen and thought about his mother's advice when he was young. Keep your peace inside you. You carry it like a lamp. He had carried that lamp through schools, offices, boardrooms, and airports. He would carry it now. He adjusted his seat a little, stretched his fingers, and smiled at the small details of this cabin life. A child drawing a plane on a napkin, a couple sharing a quiet joke, a flight attendant balancing 3 trays with grace. The 3 friends' voices shifted again, and the energy at their seats changed. It was small, but it was real. A glance that lasted too long. A laugh that was not with someone, but at someone. The air around 3A felt different for a moment, like the temperature had dropped by a degree. Marcus chose his response the same way. He chose a path through a crowded sidewalk, patient, careful, and focused on safety. He pressed the call button, not to complain, but to ask for a refill of hot water for his tea. When the attendant arrived, he spoke softly and with calm eyes, and the attendant responded with the same calm. He returned to his slides and checked the section on crisis communication. He had written these bullet points on a late night when the office was nearly empty, when the only sound was the hum of the Clary. The quiet rhythm of the flight continued after meal service, but there was a subtle change in the air around row 3 and row 4. The 3 friends behind Marcus lowered their voices and then raised them again, like a tide that kept trying to reach the shore. Their laughter held a different shape now, not free and friendly, but pointed and narrow. Marcus noticed it the way a careful person notices a draft from a small window. He did not stare. He chose patience. He placed his empty cup on the tray, closed his laptop for a moment, and looked out at the soft clouds like fields of cotton stretching to the horizon. The violinist across the aisle shifted, removed one ear pad, and glanced toward row 4. She seemed to hear something that did not feel kind. The engineer behind Marcus cleared his throat softly, as if he wished to speak, but decided not to. A flight attendant moved through the aisle with a calm face, checking belts, blankets, and bins. She paused near 4C and 4D, said something in a measured voice, and received a quick nod. For a minute, the cabin settled again. Marcus allowed himself 3 slow breaths and returned to his notes, underlining one sentence about clear communication in unusual moments. Soon the calm wavered. One of the 3 friends leaned forward and let his elbow hang past the edge of his armrest in a way that crowded the space of the person in front of him. Another tapped the back of a seat in a restless rhythm. It was not loud enough to draw, attention from far away, but it was close enough to feel in your bones. The 3rd friend spoke low and quick, and every time he finished a short line, the other 2 chuckled like they were agreeing on a secret. Marcus recognized the pattern. It was the kind of behavior that tries to make a person feel small without ever saying so in a clear sentence. Marcus rested his hands on his lap. He decided on a response that matched his values. He pressed the call button with a light touch. When the attendant arrived, he kept his voice steady and warm. He asked for more hot water for tea and, gently, for help with seat comfort in row 3 because of tapping from behind. He did not point or complain in a sharp way. He used the words he had practiced in boardrooms when meetings grew tense, simple, specific, and respectful. The attendant thanked him, listened to the subtle tapping as if it were a clock, and nodded with understanding. She walked to row 4 and spoke quietly to the 3 friends. The cabin manager, a thoughtful person with attentive eyes, joined her. They did not make a scene. They chose the soft power of presence. The manager bent slightly, hands folded, and explained that all guests deserved a peaceful seat. He asked for patience and courtesy. He did not accuse. He offered a standard of care for everyone. For a moment, the 3 friends looked surprised. Then one laughed it off and said, "No problem," in a way that suggested it was a small matter. The tapping stopped. The elbow came back. The air smoothed again. Marcus thanked the team when the attendant returned with his hot water. "We appreciate calm guests like you," she said, in a low voice meant only for him. He smiled, grateful not just for the tea, but for the way she had managed the moment. He knew service work required skill, patience, and a strong heart. He took a sip and wrote a note to himself. "Praise quiet professionalism. It is a form of safety." The plane hummed along its route. The captain gave a short update about smooth air ahead, and the seatbelt sign remained off. People stood to stretch. The violinist checked her case with gentle hands. A child walked down the aisle with a parent and counted seat numbers like they were steps on a ladder. One of the three friends rose and reached for an overhead bin. Another stood in the aisle with a stance that took up a bit more space than necessary. The third stayed seated and watched the aisle like a gatekeeper. It wasn't a clear blockage, but it felt like a door that wanted to stay half closed. The cabin manager noticed and approached with the same calm voice. "Please allow room for others," he said. He asked the standing passengers to step aside, so the aisle would remain open. The friend in the aisle shifted with a tiny delay, then smiled without warmth. The parent and child passed with thanks. The small moment ended without a scene. Marcus watched how skillful guidance could move a situation from tight to open with only a few words said in the right way. He reminded himself that leadership is a long practice of choosing tone and timing. Still, tension has a way of returning when people are not ready to let it go. After everyone sat down again, the three friends changed their style. They did not tap or crowd. They used words that were not direct, but they floated near Marcus's seat like small paper planes. The phrases were not kind. They were formed, to be heard, and yet not meant for anyone in particular if asked. It was the kind of speech designed to unsettle while denying it was aimed at anyone at all. The violinist met Marcus's eyes and gave a small, supportive nod. The engineer behind Marcus leaned forward a little, then sat back again, as if weighing whether to speak. Marcus chose to anchor himself in what he could control. He adjusted his posture. He took a long sip of tea. He opened his laptop again, but this time he did not edit slides. He opened a private note that he kept for himself in times of stress. At the top of the note were 3 lines he liked to read. "You are steady. You speak with care. You choose the next right step." He read them twice and quietly repeated them in his mind. He felt his breath deepen. He felt his shoulders drop a fraction. He pictured his mother's lamp, the one she said each person carries inside. The attendant returned to check on him. "All fine?" she asked softly. "All fine, thank you," he said, and then added, "You are doing a great job." She smiled with her eyes, and the corners of her mask lifted. She walked on, and in that brief exchange, Marcus felt something good, a thread of human support running through the cabin, strong enough to carry weight. He looked down at his phone, not to scroll for distraction, but to confirm something important. He had secure, read-only access to a support dashboard his company maintained for partner airlines. He rarely opened it on flights. Today he checked it for one reason: to remind himself that structure and help existed even in the air. He did not intend to do anything unusual. He did not want attention. He simply reviewed the simple interface and closed it again. It felt like checking a seat belt, a small action that gave him a sense of readiness, not because he planned to use it, but because he knew what was possible if a situation asked for it. He placed the phone face down on the tray and folded his hands over it, returning his focus to the present moment and the people around him. A light bump of air passed under the plane. The seatbelt sign came on with a soft chime. The captain spoke in a calm tone and asked everyone to return to their seats. The 3 friends grew quiet for a while. Marcus felt a welcome stillness. He used the time to write another page in his notebook. He wrote about dignity as a steady posture rather than a sudden pose. He wrote about the way small good choices add up. A thank you to the crew, a steady reply to a sharp comment, a request stated with clarity. He wrote about how peace is built the way professionals build safety systems, step by step, tested, improved, and shared. When the sign turned off again, the cabin stretched once more. The mood in row 4 shifted back to unsettled energy. But now, there was a new element: the eyes of other passengers. Small incidents teach a room how to pay attention. People nearby watched with quiet care. The violinist kept her earpads off. The engineer adjusted his glasses and sat a little taller. A couple across the aisle paused their movie. Even the child who had counted seats looked up from a coloring book. Awareness itself is a form of protection. It is hard to unkindly disturb, a space when many calm eyes are present. One of the three friends tried a different tactic. He asked the attendant a string of unnecessary questions, not to learn anything, but to test patience. The attendant stayed warm and steady, answering each question with the same balanced tone. The friend offered a tight smile and sat back. His plan, if there was one, did not find ground. The cabin manager made a quiet note on a small tablet, likely recording the interactions for the log every crew keeps. Marcus appreciated that. Documentation protects everyone and helps teams respond well. A little later, the engineer behind Marcus leaned forward at last and spoke in a polite voice. "If you ever need me to witness what I've seen, I will," he said. Marcus turned slightly, met his eyes, and said, "Thank you." The words were small, but they created a bridge. It reminded Marcus that in most rooms, there are people who care about fairness. The violinist added in a calm tone, "Same here." Neither of them raised their voice. Neither of them made a scene. They simply offered presence. That offer was a quiet strength in itself. The three friends noticed the shift in the cabin. They glanced around and lowered their volume. For a time, the tension dissolved into small talk, the kind that blends into the sound of air and engine. Marcus allowed himself to relax a little, not with naivety, but with wise optimism. He returned to his slides and reviewed a final section about how crews coordinate with ground teams during unusual events. The process had many layers: alerts, checklists, and confirmation steps. He smiled when he saw how clearly the plan supported the crew's professional judgment. Systems should serve people, not the other way around. As the afternoon light changed, the plane moved toward a new sky tone, a softer gold that made the sea. The light in the cabin softened as the afternoon moved forward. The air felt calm on the surface, but Marcus could feel the small waves below it. The three men behind him had quieted earlier when the crew stepped in, but now their energy returned. In little bursts, short lines, small laughs, restless motions. It was the kind of noise that tried to push a boundary without looking like it was pushing a boundary. Marcus stayed with his practice: clarity, calm, and coordination. He sat with a straight back, hands easy on the armrest, breath steady. A flight attendant came by with water. Marcus thanked her. As she moved away, a light bump came from behind. It rocked his tray just enough to shake the glass. He caught it with fast fingers and smiled to himself. No spill, no mess. Still, it was a sign. The violinist across the aisle lifted one ear pad and watched for a second. The engineer behind Marcus took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly, as if giving himself a moment to think. People nearby felt something shifting again, though nothing loud had happened yet. Another small jolt came, and then the soft sound of a comment that floated forward without clear words. It was the kind of tone that tries to reduce a person to a box. Marcus did not turn. He had learned that not every sound deserves his face. He pressed the call button, not to complain, but to invite support. When the cabin manager arrived, Marcus used simple language. "I'm comfortable staying calm," he said, "but I would appreciate steady eyes on rows 3 and 4. The manager nodded with full attention. "We're here," he said. His voice was a promise. The men behind him shifted again. A hand brushed the top of Marcus's seat. The motion felt careless, like a foot on the edge of a clean step. The engineer leaned forward and spoke in a clear, even tone that carried just far enough. "Please, give space," he said. It was not a demand, it was a reminder of basic respect. The flight attendant who had given Marcus water paused nearby and made her presence known. The aisle felt watched in a good way. The three men noticed and went quiet, only for a moment. Marcus rested his palm on his phone. He had no wish to be the center of attention. He did not want to take the crew's role. He respected the flight team and their training, but he also knew something that could help if a situation took a turn. He was not a random person with a gadget. He was a partner and investor in a company that built safety tools for airlines. The app on his phone was not a toy. It was a professional support channel with clear limits, audit trails, and human approvals. He had never used it from a passenger seat. Today, he opened it, not to control anything himself, but to offer the crew one more layer of help. The app asked for secure proof of identity. He used his face, then a short code. A simple dashboard appeared. It was designed for clarity under stress. Large text, clean icons, plain words. The phone already knew the flight number and seat map because the airline and his company had a partnership. One button said, "Assist crew." Another said, "Notify operations." A third said, "Share cabin note." He tapped, "Assist crew." A small form opened with 3 questions. Where is the concern? What do you observe? What help is needed? He kept his words simple. Rows 3 of 4. Repeated boundary testing. Crew already engaged. Please support crew with calm. Steps. Then he tapped, "Send a crew plus cockpit." On the flight deck, the system would show up as a quiet banner. Partner assist. Cabin manager. Review suggested support for rows 3 to 4. It would not act on its own. It would not lock anything without crew agreement. That was part of the system's ethics. Humans stayed in the loop. Leaders led. The app only helped people work together faster. The cabin manager's small tablet chimed. He glanced down, saw the note, and looked up at Marcus. Their eyes met. Marcus gave a tiny nod that meant, "I trust you." The manager breathed once, then tapped his own screen. He notified the captain. He asked his lead attendant to stand, near row 4. He slowed the beverage cart, placing it at an angle that naturally guided movement and kept space open around row 3. There was no scene, only subtle, smart positioning. Coordination is a quiet art. For a few minutes, it worked. The men settled. The plane felt like a living room again. A child giggled 2 rows ahead. The violinist closed her eyes. The engineer turned a page. Marcus looked out the window at the long, white line of cloud where the sun touched the top. He relaxed one notch. He sipped water. He thought about the hundreds of tiny decisions that keep people safe each day, the ones that never make news, the ones that are just good work done well. Then the tension tried once more to rise. It began with a quick word that did not need to be said, then a laugh that was not warm, then a shoulder lifted, as if someone were testing how far they could lean. The attendant took a step closer and spoke in a balanced tone. "Please keep hands and elbows within your own space, thank you." The words were simple. The message was strong. 2 of the men leaned back. The third gave a smile without kindness and looked past her, eyes scanning for a reaction. Marcus understood the pattern. He knew that a few more small pushes could turn into one big push. He did not want that. The system on his phone had another function, used rarely and only with crew approval. Cabin hold, local. It was not a lockdown for the whole plane. It was a brief, focused pause for a small section. It supported the crew by helping seats stay upright, headrests firm, and overhead bins latched in a defined area. It also dimmed the cabin lights to a gentle tone that signals sit and settle, and it sent seatbelt reminders to the screens in that zone. It was not a show of force. It was a way to lower the temperature, like turning down a burner on a stove. Marcus did not press anything himself. He wrote a second note. Recommend local hold for rows 3 to 5 for 3 minutes. Crew approval only. He sent it. The manager's tablet chimed again. He read, looked at the 3 men, looked at the aisle, looked at his lead. Then he touched his earpiece and spoke to the cockpit in brief, precise language. The captain approved the hold. The manager tapped, accept. What happened next was smooth, almost like a choreographed step. The lights in rows 3-5 shifted to a calm, low tone. A soft chime sounded, different from the seatbelt sound, more like a gentle bell. The screens in that zone showed a simple message. Please remain seated. Crew will assist shortly. The seats in those rows firmed to the upright position, just enough to cue posture without jarring anyone. Overhead latches confirmed closed. The galley door at the front clicked to secure. None of it was loud. None of it was harsh. It felt like the cabin taking a deep breath. The 3 men looked at each other, confused. One tried to stand and then paused when he realized his seat was asking him to stay. He was not trapped. He was simply encouraged to be still. The cabin manager arrived at their row, now with the quiet support of the environment on his side. Gentlemen, he said in a kind but unmistakably firm voice, we're in a brief hold to reduce movement and keep everyone comfortable. Thank you for staying seated. We'll check on you in a moment. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He set a tone. Around them, people felt a wave of calm. The engineer placed his magazine on his lap and nodded at Marcus. The violinist opened her case slightly and checked that it was safe, then gave Marcus a small, encouraging smile. A parent 2 rows ahead whispered to a child, "It's okay, the crew has it." The child nodded and traced a small plane on the window with a finger. The app on Marcus's phone showed a short timer, 02:36, 02:35. The point was not to restrict. The point was to create space for professionalism to work. The cabin manager used that space. He spoke with the 3 men in low voices. He asked for cooperation. He named the standard of the cabin: shared comfort, shared respect. He did not offer room for debate about that standard. When one of the men tried to deflect with a joke, the manager did not follow the joke. He simply repeated the standard and waited. Silence can be a strong tool when it comes with steady eyes. At the halfway mark of the hold, the captain made a general announcement to the whole cabin in his normal warm tone, not naming any row. Folks, we're going to have a smooth ride ahead. For the next few minutes, please remain seated as our crew completes a quick comfort check in the front of the cabin. Thank you for your kindness and patience. It sounded like any routine message. It protected privacy while reinforcing order. On the ground, the airline's operations center received the event log in real time. A safety specialist added a note. Local hold applied with cockpit approval. Cabin manager engaged. No medical, no injury, monitoring. If anything escalated later, the record would help. If nothing escalated, the record would still help, because good days teach as much as hard days. The timer on Marcus's screen moved to 00:54, 00:53. He felt his shoulders unlock. He had not taken control of anything. He had offered a tool. The people in charge had used it with care. That mattered to him. Systems should respect people. People should respect people. His mother's lamp glowed in his mind. He breathed in, breathed out, and let his jaw relax. When the hold ended, it ended gently. The lights returned to their normal level. The seat reminders went away. The screens returned to movies and maps. The cabin manager thanked the nearby rows in a low voice for their cooperation. He asked the three men to keep a calm posture for the remainder of the flight. He separated two of them by offering a seat trade with Liar, who had watched, and with a kind no. The cabin settled after the short local hold ended, like a pond getting smooth again after a small ripple. Lights returned to normal. Screens went back to maps and movies. The lead attendant thanked nearby rows in a warm, private voice. The three men who had been unsettled earlier were calmer now, though their eyes still moved around as if looking for a new path. Marcus sat steady, phone face down, palms relaxed on the armrests. He felt a quiet kind of strength move through the front section of the plane, the strength of people doing their jobs well and passengers choosing decency. The cabin manager used the next few minutes wisely. He checked with the cockpit, then returned with a practical plan. He spoke to the eye, three men in a measured tone that turned down heat without turning down clarity. He explained the basic rules again: shared comfort, seat courtesy, calm speech, and added a new step. Two of the men would swap seats with volunteers in different rows to give everyone space. A frequent flyer in row 6 offered to help. A kind traveler from row 2 agreed to change as well. The manager gave thanks and moved pieces like a skilled guide. No fuss, no show, just purpose. The group energy that had caused friction now had a gap in the middle, and that gap mattered. Marcus watched this with quiet respect. He did not want to be the center of attention. He wanted a safe and orderly flight for everyone. The violinist gave him a gentle smile, like a small light across the aisle. The engineer tapped his magazine and said softly, "Good plan," more to himself than to anyone else. Around them, you could feel people breathe a bit deeper. Calm as a kind of air. Marcus checked his notebook, then his watch, then the map on his screen. They were well into the route. He considered closing his eyes for a rest, but before he did, he lifted his phone and opened the partner app one more time, not to activate anything, but to support the team with a record. He typed a short line into the share cabin note. "Box, seat separation done, front cabin calm, thank you." He sent it to the crew. The cabin manager's tablet chimed, and he glanced over with a look that said, "We see you. We appreciate you." Marcus nodded back and put the phone away. The lead attendant began a quiet pass through the rows with water and small snacks. She paused at Marcus's seat and asked, "Tea or water?" "Water is perfect," he said, "and you're doing excellent work." She smiled with her eyes. "Thank you for staying steady." Those words were like a stitch in a strong fabric. When people choose steadiness together, a room changes. For a while, the plane felt like a shared living room again. The child who had counted seat numbers drew a bright airplane on a napkin. A couple returned to their movie. The engineer finally finished his article about bridges and moved on to a small puzzle in the back of his magazine. The violinist wrote something on a note card, then slid it into her case. The three men, now separated, kept their voices low. They looked at their screens. They picked up drinks when offered. Their shoulders lost that tight, restless angle. The captain's voice came over the speaker with a smooth update. He praised the crew quietly for a comfort check earlier, then said weather was good and the plane would arrive on time. He reminded everyone to be kind to seatmates if they needed to stand or reach. It sounded like a normal announcement. It also set a tone. This is a respectful space, and we keep it that way together. On the ground, the airline's operations center followed along through the secure log. An operations lead added a note: "Monitor rows 3-6. Prepare gate support on arrival. No medical needed. No service interruption." The log's tone was calm and professional, the kind used on days when teams do their best work quietly. A security coordinator flagged the flight for a standard meet and greet at the gate. The plan was not heavy-handed. It was prepared and fair. Marcus leaned back and closed his eyes for a minute, breathing with the steady sound of the engines. When he opened them again, the sun outside had warmed the tops of the clouds into a soft gold. He thought about how many parts of a flight are truly a gift. The crew's training, the pilot's focus, the engineer's designs, and the passengers' shared choice to be good neighbors in a small space. He felt grateful for all of it. He took a small sip of water and put the cup down carefully. A short time later, a tiny test arrived, not big, but revealing. One of the three men, now seated several rows away, tried to start a conversation that rolled in the direction of excuses. The lead attendant listened with full attention for 15 seconds, then used a single firm sentence that held the wall. "Let's keep a peaceful cabin for everyone, thank you." She added no extra words. She left no space for debate. Then, she offered water. The man took the water and said no more. It was a master class in tone, respect without confusion, kindness without giving up boundaries. The cabin manager did one more smart thing before the descent. He walked the front section and quietly took names from anyone who wished to share what they observed earlier. He did not push. He simply offered a small card and said, "If you want to write a brief note on arrival, this helps us keep a clear record." The engineer accepted a card. The violinist accepted one too. A couple across the aisle did as well. Marcus accepted one and wrote only a few words. "Crew steady, clear guidance, calm restored." He did not list anything else. He knew the log and the crew had details. The plane began a slow descent. The captain announced the approach with his usual calm voice. The lights shifted a little brighter. People straightened their seats and stowed items. The crew checked belts, bins, and bags. The child who had drawn the airplane held the napkin like a flag. The violinist placed her case beneath the seat, with gentle care. The engineer tucked away his magazine and folded his hands, as if thanking the sky for smooth air. Marcus felt a soft buzz on his phone. It was a secure message from the operations center, routed through the app, addressed to the cabin manager, but mirrored to Marcus for transparency. "Gate team ready. If any seats need to remain until we arrive at the gate, say the word." The cabin manager replied with one line. "All calm. Standard arrival. Gate meet requested." It was good to see clear, simple communication. It meant everyone would step into their next role with a shared picture. As the ground drew closer, the three men kept close to silence. One stared out the window, another looked at the map. The third kept his hands folded. They seemed to understand the shape of things now. The crew's standard was firm, the cabin's attention was real, and the journey would finish with order. The cabin manager stood near the front and watched the rows with kind, steady eyes. Marcus felt admiration for that posture. Leadership is sometimes just standing in the right place with the right tone. Wheels met runway with a soft, confident touch. The cabin released a breath together. The captain thanked everyone for flying and asked them to stay seated until the seatbelt sign turned off. The plane slowed, turned, rolled, and stopped at the gate. The bell chimed. Overhead bins clicked open across the cabin. The lead attendant and the cabin manager stepped forward again, not to make an announcement, but to honor privacy and process. They approached the three men separately and asked them to remain seated for a quick word. The request was polite. It was also non-negotiable. Passengers in nearby rows stayed seated a moment longer in a quiet form of support. The engineer caught Marcus's eye and gave a tiny nod that said, "We got here." The violinist mouthed, "Thank you," and then looked down, giving space. Marcus replied with a small gesture of his hand that meant, "All of us together." Two gate agents and an airport security officer boarded with relaxed faces and professional posture. They did not rush. They did not raise voices. The cabin manager gave them a short, clear summary. He did not add heat to his words. He added facts. The officer nodded, thanked him, and spoke to the three men in a calm, direct tone. He explained that they would have a quick conversation off the plane about cabin standards and that notes from crew and passengers would be reviewed. The men listened. One started to speak, then paused when the officer lifted a hand slightly and said, "We'll hear you in a moment. Right now, please follow me." The tone was respectful. It carried authority without noise. As this happened, the rest of the cabin began to stand and gather bags. The lead attendant created a gentle lane for families, older passengers, and anyone with tight connections. Nobody pushed. People said please and thank you and after you. It felt like a group choosing to be a community, even if only for a few minutes. Marcus stayed near his seat until the front cleared, giving space for the small process near row 5 to finish. When it did, the officer thanked the cabin manager, and the three men stepped into the aisle with quiet faces. They walked forward under the careful eye of the gate team. There were no raised voices. There were no sharp gestures. There was only the shape of accountability, calm, human, and real. As Marcus stood to leave, the cabin manager approached him with a brief, heartfelt sentence. "Thank you for your steadiness and your help." Marcus replied in the same spirit. "Thank you for leading with care. Your team is excellent." He felt that deeply. He believed in praising good work when he saw it. The lead attendant added, "Safe travels and a good evening ahead." He thanked her for all the quiet work that passengers never fully see. Down the jet bridge, the air smelled like the ground again. People walked in an easy line, some seas, some... Marcus walked toward baggage claim with an easy pace, the soft rhythm of rolling suitcases around him. The air in the terminal felt different from the cabin, cooler, open, and full of small echoes. He paused near a pillar to send his wife another message. "All good, headed to the hotel after a quick check-in with the airline team." She replied with a hug emoji and wrote, "Proud of your calm heart." He smiled, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and continued down the bright hallway. Near the end of the jet bridge area, an operations lead waited with a polite smile and a tablet in hand. "Mr. Marcus, I'm Dana from Airline Operations. May I have 2 minutes? I want to thank you and also make sure our notes are complete." Her voice was steady and kind. Marcus nodded. They stepped to the side where it was quiet. Dana asked simple, open questions, what he observed when the crew stepped in, what helped restore calm. Marcus kept his answers clear and short, honoring the crew's leadership. "They stayed steady," he said. "They set a fair standard. They guided the room without adding heat." Dana typed, then looked up with gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you. We appreciate how you supported our team. We'll add a commendation for the cabin manager and the lead attendant," Marcus said. "They absolutely deserve it." As he turned toward the escalator, he saw 2 familiar faces. The violinist stood a few steps away, case in hand, with the same gentle smile she'd shared on the plane. The engineer lifted his magazine. In a small wave, they met for a brief moment, 3 travelers who had shared a small chapter of life together. "Thank you for your calm," the violinist said, "and for your quiet help." Marcus replied, "Thank you for being present. It matters when good people look up and care." The engineer added, "I sent a note to the airline praising the crew. I included what I saw. That kind of professionalism should be known." Marcus nodded with respect. "Well done." Then the best moment of the evening arrived like a small gift. The child who had drawn an airplane on a napkin stood with a parent, holding the drawing like a treasure. The parent said, "Our little one wanted to give you this. They said you helped make the plane calm." The child looked up with big, hopeful eyes. Marcus knelt to be at the child's level and received the napkin with care. "This is beautiful," he said. "I'm going to keep it on my desk. It will remind me that calm is a team sport." The child beamed. The parent smiled with relief. Simple kindness moved through all three of them like sunlight. At baggage claim, Marcus's suitcase arrived quickly. He tugged it off the carousel and made his way outside to a rideshare. The driver greeted him with warm music and a friendly hello. The city lights glowed like a soft grid. Marcus rested his head lightly against the seat and took one long breath. He felt the day settle in his body, not heavy, just complete. Before reaching the hotel, he opened the partner app one more time, not to add any tension, but to close the loop with gratitude. He filed a final note. Crew, steady under pressure. Local hold used appropriately with cockpit approval. Recommend a short, calm mode prompt in the app that reminds crew to pair boundary setting with warm words. He tapped send and watched. The small green check appear. The hotel lobby smelled like citrus and clean wood. The clerk welcomed him, offered cold water, and handed over a key card. In the quiet of his room, Marcus set his suitcase by the wall, placed the napkin drawing on the desk, and opened the curtains to a calm view of the city. He phoned his wife. They shared 10 gentle minutes, no long stories, no big speeches, just the comfort of two people who know each other's hearts. "Sleep well," she said. "You did good work today." "So did many others," he answered. "That's the part I love, how people step forward together." He ordered a simple soup and a salad, then opened his laptop. He wrote 2 short emails to the airline, one to the operations lead, thanking her for clear communication, and one to customer care, requesting formal recognition for the cabin manager and the lead attendant. He also wrote a note to his own team. Small idea. Add a thank crew template inside the app that an observing partner can send when calm is restored. Simple, sincere, and fast. He hit send. The food arrived and he ate quietly, grateful for something warm and plain after a long day. Before sleep, he took the napkin drawing and slid it into his notebook like a page that belongs in a favorite story. Morning brought clear light and a new task. He dressed in a clean shirt and stepped into his presentation with the partner airlines. Technical group. The meeting room was modern and bright, with a large screen and neat rows of chairs. Pilots, cabin managers, and safety leaders filled the front seats. Software engineers and operations staff sat behind them. Marcus began with a simple picture. "Safety is a circle," he said. "It includes people in the cabin, people in the cockpit, people on the ground, and people who build tools to help them all communicate well." He showed the system's main screens, plain, readable, respectful. He emphasized that humans stayed in the loop at every step. "Tools are here to support judgment," he said, "not replace it." When he reached the part about the local hold feature, he paused. He did not tell the whole story of last night. He offered a short, anonymous case study. On a recent flight, a brief focused pause helped a small section settle so that the crew could set a calm standard. It worked because the crew led with tone. The system simply gave them a few quiet handles. Heads nodded around the room. A pilot raised a hand and said, "The calm lighting and clear screen message are key." A cabin manager added, "The separation of seats afterward was the right touch." An engineer in the back asked, "How do we keep privacy and respect at the center?" Marcus answered, "We log facts, not gossip. We avoid labels. We write what happened and what helped. And we share praise widely when people do good work." The presentation ended with a small round of applause, not loud but sincere. Afterward, people came up to ask questions, offer suggestions, and share their own stories of quiet leadership. One pilot suggested a gentle chime pattern that signals comfort rather than alarm. A cabin manager proposed a rotating set of friendly screen messages for calm mode, each one short and kind. "Please sit and breathe. Your crew is here to help." Marcus wrote everything down. He loved that part, the way a room becomes smarter together. At lunchtime, his phone buzzed with an email from the airline's customer care team. The subject line read, "Thank you and crew recognition." The message said they had added formal commendations to both crew members and logged the event as a case of calm restoration through crew leadership. It also noted that gate support had spoken privately with the three men and that standard follow-up would continue according to policy. The note ended with a sentence Marcus liked. "Our goal is not punishment for its own sake, but education, accountability, and a respectful cabin for all." He replied, "Well said. Thank you for this approach." A second message arrived from the Operations Center with a short update. The three men had been asked to provide written notes acknowledging cabin standards and to complete a brief, respectful training before future travel. There was also mention of apology letters to the crew and to any passengers who wished to receive one. Marcus read the lines twice. He felt no wish to hold the story as a weight in his chest. If the letters were sincere, he would accept them. Growth is a good outcome. It does not erase earlier moments, but it turns them into learning instead of a lasting hurt. Back at the hotel, he opened his company's internal channel and posted a debrief. What had worked, what could be better, and 3 small design updates. To ship in the next release, an even softer color palette for calm lighting, a witness card QR code the crew could show to passengers who wanted to share observations later, and a gratitude prompt that appears after a hold ends to encourage quick praise for crew. The comments from his team were thoughtful and fast. A designer wrote, "I can prototype that in 2 days." An engineer added, "We can ship a first version by next sprint." A safety researcher suggested a study to measure the effect of clearer messages on cabin mood. Marcus wrote back, "Wonderful. Keep people at the center." He finished his meetings with a light heart. In the evening, he stopped by the airport early to handwrite 2 thank-you cards. At the counter, he asked a supervisor if they could be placed in the crew's mailboxes. The cards were simple. "Thank you for steady hands and warm voices. Your leadership made a big difference." He signed his name small, not as a CEO, but as a grateful traveler. The supervisor promised to deliver them. "They'll love this," she said. "Crew don't always hear the quiet thanks." On his flight home, the cabin was peaceful from the start. He took his seat by the window, placed the napkin drawing inside the seat back pocket for a second, and then tucked it safely back into his notebook. He read a chapter of a book, sipped water, and watched the wing draw a straight, bright line across the sky. No unusual events, no special actions. Just the simple beauty of a shared trip done well. When he reached his own office the next day, he set the napkin drawing in a small frame and placed it on the shelf beside a small desk lamp. He turned the lamp on. The drawing glowed softly in the warm light. 2 wings, a curved body, and a smiling sun. He thought of his mother's words again. "Keep your peace inside you. You carry it like a lamp." He touched the frame gently and felt a quiet promise renew itself in his chest.